Why 50% of the world live in these 6 overcrowded countries? Our planet is teeming with life, home to over 8 billion people spread across 195 countries. It's a remarkable thought, isn't it? But here's a fact that might surprise you. Nearly half of the world's population is concentrated in just 6 countries. That's right. A mere 3% of the world's nations hold a staggering 50% of its inhabitants. So what's driving this incredible concentration of humanity? Today, on Across the Globe, we're diving into the factors that have shaped these densely populated nations, exploring the unique challenges and opportunities that come with accommodating such a significant portion of the global population. Coming in at number 6 on our list is a country known for its vibrant culture, entrepreneurial spirit, and rapidly growing population: Nigeria. Now, while Nigeria might not be the largest country in the world by landmass, it certainly packs a punch when it comes to population density. To give you a sense of scale, picture combining the states of Nevada, Utah, and California. That's roughly the size of Nigeria. But while those 3 U.S. states have a combined population of 45.5 million, Nigeria is home to a staggering 223 million people. That's 5 times the population squeezed into a similar area. And the numbers are only going up. Nigeria's population has been on a steady upward trajectory, experiencing an annual increase of 2.4%. To put that into perspective, the United States, a country often associated with population growth, has a growth rate of just 0.5%. All of this means that Nigeria currently holds 2.78% of the world's entire population, with a population density of 636 people per square mile. To grasp the magnitude of this density, consider Greenland, the least densely populated country in the world, with a mere 0.5 people per square mile. One of the most significant factors driving Nigeria's population growth is its high birth rate. While the birth rate has seen a slight decrease in recent years, it remains significantly higher than the global average. Globally, women have an average of 2.3 children, but in Nigeria, that number more than doubles to 5.3 children per woman. This high birth rate is attributed to a confluence of factors, including cultural norms that encourage large families, a tendency towards marriage and childbearing at younger ages, and limited access to family planning resources. Looking ahead, Nigeria's rapid population growth presents both exciting opportunities and complex challenges. The United Nations has expressed concerns that Nigeria's current rate of population increase is unsustainable, potentially straining resources and infrastructure. If current trends continue, the UN projects that Nigeria could become the 3rd most populated country in the world by 2050, surpassing the United States. Finding effective ways to address the challenges associated with such rapid population growth, while simultaneously harnessing the potential of its young and vibrant population, will be crucial for Nigeria's future. At number 5 on our list, we arrive in South Asia, to a nation with a rich history, diverse culture, and a rapidly growing population: Pakistan. While slightly smaller in landmass than Nigeria, clocking in at around 345,000 square miles, roughly the size of the United Kingdom and France combined, Pakistan actually boasts an even larger population. With a staggering 245 million residents, Pakistan is home to 17 million more people than Nigeria. To put that into perspective, it's nearly twice the combined population of the UK and France. This means that Pakistan accounts for a significant portion of the global population, roughly 3% of the world's 8 billion people. And for a country that occupies just 6% of the Earth's landmass, that's a pretty remarkable figure. So what's driving this incredible population growth? Well, for starters, Pakistan has been on a steady upward population trajectory for quite some time. Between 1998 and today, its population has surged by a remarkable 57%. This rapid growth is largely attributed to a birth rate that, although declining, still remains significantly higher than the global average. While the global birth rate sits at 2.3 children per woman, Pakistan's rate is 3.56, a difference that adds up quickly over time. Experts point to various factors contributing to this elevated birth rate, including limited access to family planning resources, cultural norms that favor larger families, and religious beliefs that influence reproductive choices. Another factor contributing to Pakistan's growing population is its high birth-to-death ratio. The country's birth rate is a notable 27.6 births per 1,000 people, while the death rate is significantly lower at just 7.2 per 1,000 people. This considerable difference naturally leads to a continuously expanding population. But what are the implications of this rapid growth? For starters, Pakistan is already experiencing strain on its infrastructure and resources. Schools and medical clinics are overcrowded, and this issue is only projected to intensify as the population continues to climb. Experts predict that Pakistan's population could double by 2050, with some estimates suggesting it could reach a staggering 400 million people. This unprecedented growth will undoubtedly put even greater pressure on essential services like healthcare, education, water, and sanitation systems, making sustainable development a crucial focus for the nation's future. Moving on to number 4, we arrive in Southeast Asia, to a country often overlooked in discussions about global population giants, Indonesia. Now, you might not immediately associate Indonesia with a massive population, but with 277.5 million people calling this archipelago nation home, it firmly secures its place among the world's most populous countries. It's important to note that Indonesia has a significantly larger landmass than the countries we've explored so far, spanning an impressive 736,000 square miles. However, even with this vast expanse, Indonesia still accounts for roughly 3.5% of the world's population, a significant figure considering it occupies just 1.3% of the Earth's land area. One interesting aspect of Indonesia's population dynamics is that its growth rate has actually been slowing down in recent years. The country's year-over-year population change currently sits at 0.74%, which translates to an increase of about 2 million people. And perhaps even more surprisingly, Indonesia's current birth rate is actually lower than the global average, hovering around 2 births per woman. So how did Indonesia reach such a high population if its current birth rate is relatively low? Well, the answer lies in its history. Until 2017, Indonesia's birth rate consistently exceeded the global average, meaning that decades of above-average fertility rates contributed significantly to its current population size. You might assume that Indonesia's vast archipelago, with its thousands of islands, would mitigate the challenges of a large population. Unfortunately, that's not quite the case. Many parts of Indonesia's infrastructure are already struggling to keep pace with its growing population. Public transportation systems are often overcrowded, and the country faces ongoing challenges in providing adequate housing, water, and food security for its people. In fact, Indonesia's rice production currently falls short of meeting its domestic demand, requiring the country to rely on imports to feed its population. This highlights the crucial need for sustainable development strategies that can ensure a harmonious balance between population growth and resource availability for Indonesia's future. Landing at number 3 on our list is a nation that likely comes as no surprise, a global superpower synonymous with diversity, innovation, and yes, a large population, the United States. With approximately 340 million residents, the U.S. secures its position as the 3rd most populous country in the world. The U.S. population continues to grow, albeit at a slower pace compared to some other nations on our list. Year over year, the U.S. saw a population increase of about 0.5%, which translates to a little over 2 million additional people. In total, the U.S. is home to roughly 4.23% of the world's population. However, unlike the countries we've explored so far, the U.S. has a significant advantage when it comes to accommodating its population, its vast landmass. Spanning a whopping 3.8 million square miles, that's 3.5 million square miles of land, and an additional 227,000 square miles of water, the U.S. is one of the 5 largest nations in the world by physical size. This expansive territory naturally leads to a lower population density compared to the more compact nations we've discussed. For instance, the US has a population density of 96 people per square mile. While this might sound crowded, compare that to Indonesia's 397 people per square mile, Pakistan's 808, or Nigeria's 636, and you start to see a different picture. So while the US might have a large population in absolute terms, its vast landmass creates a sense of spaciousness that makes it feel less densely populated compared to some other nations. But what factors have driven the US's significant population growth? Well, there are two primary forces at play here: immigration and birth rates. The US has long been known as a welcoming destination for immigrants from all over the world, a nation built on the contributions of people seeking a better life. For instance, the number of first-generation immigrants living in the US skyrocketed from 9.6 million in 1970 to 38 million in 2007, highlighting the ongoing allure of the American dream. Historically, the US has also experienced relatively high birth rates. Back in the year 1800, the average woman in the US gave birth to 7 children. However, with the exception of a brief baby boom in the 1940s and 1950s, the US birth rate has been steadily declining since 1800. Today, the average woman in the US has just 1.64 children, a significant drop from those early days, and a stark contrast to the high birth rates we see in countries like Nigeria. Despite this declining birth rate, the US population is still projected to grow, albeit at a slower pace. Experts estimate that the US population will reach 388 million by 2050, a considerable increase that will undoubtedly shape the country's social, economic, and environmental landscape. Next up, at number 2, we arrive in East Asia, to a nation that has experienced a remarkable transformation over the past century, becoming a global economic powerhouse with a population that has captured the world's attention. China. With a staggering 1.425 billion people, China's population is over 4 times larger than the US, despite the two countries having comparable land masses. To put this into perspective, a mind-boggling 17.7% of the world's entire population calls China home. However, unlike the other nations we've explored so far, China has recently witnessed a surprising shift in its population trends, a decline. Yes, you read that right. China's population is actually shrinking. While the decline is relatively small, at just 0.2% year over year, it has still resulted in a decrease of roughly 216,000 people over the past year. So how did China reach this point of unprecedented population size? And what factors have contributed to this recent decline? Well, China's population growth story is a complex one, deeply intertwined with its historical, social, and economic evolution. In the years following World War II, China's population began to surge, fueled by government policies that encouraged large families. These policies were aimed at boosting the country's workforce, strengthening its military, and increasing agricultural output. This trend reached its peak in 1970, when the average woman in China gave birth to 6.3 children. However, as China's population continued to swell, concerns about overpopulation and its potential strain on resources began to mount. In response, the Chinese government implemented its controversial one-child policy in 1980, a policy that remained in effect until 2016. This policy, while effective in curbing population growth, had significant social and economic repercussions. China's birth rate plummeted, reaching a low of 1.61 children per woman in 2005. Even though the one-child policy has now been lifted, its impact on China's demographic landscape remains profound. Social norms around family size have shifted, and many couples are choosing to have fewer children, citing rising costs of living and education as key deterrents. Furthermore, China's economic growth has slowed in recent years, adding another layer of complexity to the decision of whether or not to have children. The combination of these factors, coupled with a rise in death rates that now exceed birth rates, has led to China's recent population decline. As China navigates this new demographic reality, it faces a unique set of challenges and opportunities, from an aging workforce and a shrinking consumer base to the potential for increased innovation and a more sustainable future. finally, claiming the #1 spot on our list, the nation with the largest population in the world is India. With a population exceeding 1.428 billion people, India just barely edges out China in the global population race. To put that into perspective, nearly 1 in 5 people on this planet, that's a staggering 18% of the global population, calls India home. Unlike China, which has recently experienced a slight population decline, India's population continues to grow. In fact, its population has been increasing at a rate of 0.81% year over year, adding roughly 11.5 million people annually. While this growth rate is lower than what we've seen in some other countries on our list, it's still significant considering India's already massive population. Now, you might be wondering how India managed to reach such a remarkable population size. Well, there are a few key factors at play here. Firstly, India, while a vast and diverse country, is relatively compact compared to giants like the US or China. It spans roughly 1.27 million square miles, making it about a third the size of the United States, but with a population 4.2 times larger. Secondly, India has a remarkably young population. A staggering 50% of its residents are under the age of 25. This youthful demographic profile has significant implications for India's future population growth. Even though India's birth rate is gradually declining, the sheer number of young people entering their reproductive years means that the country's population is projected to continue expanding for several decades to come. In fact, experts estimate that India's population won't reach its peak until around 2065, highlighting the long-term impact of a youthful population structure. Another factor contributing to India's impressive population size is its history of high birth rates. For much of the 20th century, India experienced a consistently high fertility rate, with women having an average of between 5.41 and 5.95 children between 1880 and 1975. While this rate has steadily declined since 1975, it was still at a notable 2.24 children per woman as recently as 2020, significantly higher than the current global average. As India navigates the challenges and opportunities that come with being the world's most populous nation, its future will undoubtedly be shaped by its ability to create a sustainable path forward, ensuring that its resources and infrastructure can keep pace with its growing and youthful population.